Welcome to episode 203 of Angela Watson's Truth for Teachers. I'm your host, Angela Watson, and I'm here to speak life, encouragement, and truth into the minds and hearts of educators and get you energized for the week ahead. Today, I'm going to share 5 things to remember when you feel like you have no experience in teaching the way you need to this year, and you're totally overwhelmed with tools and ideas. Visit truthforteachers.com to get the transcript, or find our Truth for Teachers podcast community on Facebook. This episode is brought to you in part by ViewSonic, a leading global provider of visual solutions and a dedicated member of the educational community for over 30 years. They are proud to support teachers in schools by releasing new tools to help teachers teach remotely. Their MyViewBoard digital whiteboarding software has multiple distance learning tools that are currently offered for free during these trying times. Teachers have the option to either teach live or record the lesson to be shared later. Check it out today and get access at myviewboard.com/distance-learning. Also, if you want an education master's degree program that equips you to make a real difference in the lives of kids, check out Marian University. They have a 100% online, at-risk, and alternative education master's program. Marian University will help you design and implement alternative education methods and strategies to support our most vulnerable students. Learn from coursework that's designed to promote the ultimate in effectiveness for them and the best in flexibility for you. Visit marianuniversity.edu/ARAE for more info. So we are kicking off a school year in which I think most teachers feel like they have tons of new things to learn. I mean, it's sort of like that every year, but it's even more so this year. And you might be trying to figure out how to do things we've never had to figure out before, like how to teach kids without having them share materials, or how to teach without a class library, or how to teach without having kids come within a few feet of each other. You might be trying to learn a bunch of new tech tools, or figure out how to turn a crisis situation for remote learning last spring into something more sustainable. All of these things will require you to let go of many best practices that you were trained in and used to, and to develop a flexible, resilient pedagogy instead. You can listen to the last episode, episode 202, for more on that. And while these changes can ultimately bring us to a more student-centered way of doing school, there's no question that the learning curve for many teachers is beyond overwhelming at the moment. Learning the new LMS software or parent communication app or student communication device can feel like one more thing that you're expected to master and you just can't prioritize with everything else going on. If it makes you feel better, I was an instructional technology coach for several years, and I felt constantly behind. Even then, when that was literally my full-time job to stay on top of ed tech developments and help teachers integrate technology. I'd talk to other technologists working for the company, and we would each learn new things from each other every time. I hadn't heard of at least a third of the programs and apps that they were using, and vice versa, even though we were doing the same job in the same school system. So it's not just you who feels like there's constantly something new to learn in order to stay up to date and that they haven't heard of half of the great ideas that are out there. There are thousands of new apps that are launched daily. There are countless programs you can try, hundreds of thousands of educational websites. There's simply no way that one person can learn all of them or even a significant percentage of them. And the good news is you don't have to try because that's not the goal. If you lived 1,000 years, you still wouldn't have time to learn about every amazing app and program and website that is out there for kids and learning right now. But the only resources that you need to learn are the ones that you need in your teaching. And that might be only a handful for right now, maybe a few more over the next few months, and a few more after that. So stop telling yourself that you have to learn how to be proficient in all technology. It's not going to happen, and it doesn't need to. Here are 5 guidelines that I want you to keep in mind when you feel like you're just learning to teach for the first time and you're overwhelmed with all the tools and ideas. First off, remember to start with the outcome that you want to achieve and choose the best tool accordingly, rather than vice versa. Don't fall into the trap of thinking, well, everyone says that Evernote's fantastic, so I should probably start using Evernote. If you already have an efficient system for organizing your notes and lists, then you don't need Evernote. If you have no system at all, Evernote might have too steep of a learning curve and might feel even more overwhelming. You may want to just start with something really simple that you already know how to use. For example, I use the Notes app that comes standard on iPhone and iPad and MacBooks. That works just fine for me. It's really simple. It took me about 5 minutes to get the hang of it, and I didn't need any kind of training. The outcome that you want should guide your selection of the tool. Ask yourself, what is it that I'm trying to achieve? And what's the best, simplest tool to help me meet that goal? If you're not sure, then start with what's required or what's provided by your school. It's really worthwhile to learn all the ins and outs of mandated tools before rushing to find more. You might find that Google Classroom or some other tool that you're already familiar with has some simple extensions and add-ons for the functionality you need, so you don't have to learn something brand new. So start with the outcome and choose the tool accordingly instead of choosing the tool and then figuring out your outcome. That leads us to number 2, which is to approach technology as a tool to support learning and not the focus of the learning itself. So if you're saying to yourself, well, we haven't used X, Y, and Z in a while, we should do that again, that approach is probably not going to have a really transformative effect on student learning. And that's because the learning outcome matters more than the tool. So instead of thinking of your lesson procedure as, today we will use BrainPop, think, today we're going to learn about photosynthesis, and we'll use a BrainPop movie and a game to build background knowledge. We want to draw kids' focus to the skills that they're practicing, not the tech tools that they're using. And this can be a very comforting reminder because it shifts your focus away from the overwhelming array of options and the things that you don't know how to do or the things that you could be doing. And it recenters you on what you do know, which is how to teach content and skills to children. You know how to do that. So stay focused on the learning and not the tools. Similarly, you want to use tech to enhance but not dominate what you're already doing. You don't need to throw out all your paper and pencil activities and replace them with apps. You don't need to use Chromebooks for every single lesson just because you were given a set of devices. And this is true even if you're teaching remotely. Kids can still read physical books. They can still do activities on paper. They can spend time learning without staring at a screen. In fact, it's going to be healthier for them if they're getting a nice mix of offline and online activities. Not everything kids do needs to be formally assessed or graded. And you can't try to do that. You can't try to grade everything right now in order to, quote, hold them accountable for 6 full hours of work every day. Like if I don't grade every single thing, then they're just not going to work. Focus on building trust and engagement, relationships. Find meaningful student-directed projects and activities. And then let kids do some work offline. Let them do some things on paper. Sometimes the best tool for learning is something low tech or no tech at all. And that's good. Integrating technology for technology's sake will create unnecessary stress. So use tech to enhance, not dominate what you're already doing. Fourth, use what you love and don't abandon what works for the next shiny new thing. If you want to save time and energy, resist the urge to build an ever-growing collection of cool apps and fun websites. And don't get drawn in by the promises of every new tool that's out there. It's really easy to collect the resources, but that's part of what makes lesson planning so overwhelming, because then you have to sort back through 100 different ideas that you've collected and figure out which ones to use. You don't need to do it that way. It's incredibly inefficient to keep learning new tools and to keep introducing new tools to students. It takes up a lot of class time and a lot of mental bandwidth for kids too, to be constantly learning something new with tech and learning new content and learning new skills. If you can keep the tools consistent, that lets kids focus on the skills and the content. So if you have stuff that's already meeting your needs, stick with that. The goal is not to collect 1,000 brand new tools that you could be doing, because you're going to have to look through all of those and make selections when it's time to plan your lesson. That's going to create more overwhelm that you just don't need. There will always be something newer and better out there. So don't worry about what you're missing. If and when you feel like the tool that you're using is no longer meeting your needs and you have the mental bandwidth to start processing something else and experimenting with something new in your teaching, that's a good time to switch. But in the meantime, use what you love. Don't abandon what works for the next shiny new thing. And finally, be willing to learn through experimentation rather than a formal training. Most tech tools today are designed to be user-friendly, and their basic functionality will become more apparent as soon as you start exploring. So jump in there and experiment. That really is the best way to learn. Once you're comfortable with all the basics of a tool, you can let the kids take over and become experts on all the little nuances of the program. A handful of students are likely to take to the app or the program right away, and they can be your problem solvers. They can be your IT team. They can be your tech advisors when needed. Now, before I wrap up, I want to speak more to folks who feel like learning through experimentation is frustrating. I don't want to discount the fact that huge learning platforms are often rolled out in schools with minimal relevant training for teachers. Some things you do need PD on, and you need ongoing support. But I want you to know that Google is your very best friend. If you wait until your school district provides training on everything you need to know about technology, you're going to be stuck in the dark ages and always frustrated. So when you're not sure what to do, Google it. How to copy paste, how to create an email list. No matter where you are on the tech proficiency spectrum, I guarantee that 3 million other people have already searched for the exact same thing. There will be dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of websites with your exact phrase that will explain to you step by step exactly what to do. You'll even find video tutorials and screencasts. Now, when that happens, don't get overwhelmed by the results. Pick one with a description that sounds like a good match and check it out. If you don't find what you're looking for, it seems too complicated, then go back, pick another link. When you find a good resource that explains how to do something, you can bookmark it or save it to your favorites and Google that if you don't know how. But don't beat yourself up by saying, I read it and I don't remember. Someone showed me how, but I forgot. I'm so bad with technology. You're not bad with technology, and you don't have to remember how to do everything. Who could possibly memorize all the ins and outs of all of the different tools that we're expected to use these days? You can just go back to the site that you bookmarked and reread how to do it again. Or if you didn't save the site, you can search again. It will come up in your history, and you'll even be able to see which links you've clicked on in the past. Now, if you're fortunate enough to be offered technology PD, remember also there that you don't have to memorize how to do everything. You don't have to keep copious notes about every little detail that you're taught to do. Pull up the site or program that you want to use and do what the kids do. Just play around with it. The only way to really learn something is to explore it yourself. Trial and error is your friend, and Google is too. You can always search for something later on when you forget how to do it. I think it's a better use of your time to experiment with one tool than to spend lots of time going around and trying out all these different things. You do have the time to experiment a little bit and do that trial and error if you're narrowing your focus on how many tools you're attempting to learn at one time. I think the sheer amount of options that are available to teachers is only going to increase with time. So if you're waiting for that feeling of being overwhelmed by all the choices and by all the things you need to know, if you're waiting for that feeling to go away, I think you're just going to get more and more frustrated. Now is the time to jump in there. This is the year that so many teachers are in that first year feeling. So many teachers are feeling like they're having to learn things from scratch and having to completely overhaul their practices. So you won't be alone. You're not the only person who's going to feel like you're still a learner. And being a learner is a good thing. That's what a teacher is, right? You might not ever be an expert on the thing that you're trying to figure out, but you can be a determined, lifelong learner who is willing to put yourself out there and keep trying. Have a great week. You can do this. And remember, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be worth it.